Good morning, everyone. So, welcome to Westside. My name is Morgan Wrinklespaw, and my pronouns are they, them. If you've never been here before, welcome on in. Whether you're a longtime member or a first-time visitor, online or in person, with us at present or watching some date in the future, I welcome you into our home and into our community. Just a few announcements today. We do have Earth Church today at 3 p.m. So if that's something you're interested in, we'd love to have you. We also have the fall auction coming up. That is going to be October 15th, outdoors here at Westside. All this information will be in the newsletter as well as on your screen if you are here on YouTube with us this morning. We also do have our legacy campaign going on, trying to pay down our mortgage. Again, all that information's in the newsletter, including information on our Wednesday and Thursday night conversations through Zoom. Thinking About Theology and Thursday evening conversations can be accessed online through our website. We do have Family Promise Host Week coming up. That is going to be October 2nd through the 9th. We have the sign-up link in our newsletter, as well as information on Second Monday Lunch. That's going to be Monday, October 10th at 11:30. We also have book club coming up. Typically, this is a monthly thing, so I want to highlight that they are meeting next December 3rd. The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie will be December 3rd. It is a longer book, so giving a little bit more time to read that. As always, we do still have volunteer opportunities available for greeters and safety coordinators. If you are interested, please see Alice or Jerry. I believe Carol has a couple more announcements for us today.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. I am Reverend Carol Bedeau. I am privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I have a special welcome this morning. A special welcome to our friends from the Oak Ridge UU Church who are joining us virtually, they're remote, both in time and space. They'll be watching this a week from now. So welcome to the ORUUC folks. We're super glad to have you with us. A couple of additions. First, I have a question. Do we have any additions we want to talk about on the auction? I'm happy to make a spiel, or let Ann make a spiel about that. I will spiel away. I'll spiel away. Tell me if I've missed anything. So the auction is coming up in a couple of weeks, and it is 2 weeks already. Three weeks from yesterday. Okay, it's going to be outside again, and this year we're just going to encourage you to be creative in the things you bring. If you're bringing objects, awesome. You can let us know about those. There's an auction at Westside UUC email that you can email to let us know about that, and we have spaces ready to hold objects. And also events. So in the past, we've had hikes and dinners, and those are wonderful. And I have made a special request this year that we try to challenge ourselves a little bit to create events that are themed toward either art or social action. So you might host a hike in a site that is particularly relevant to some social justice theme. You might host a dinner where you invite people to bring information about a particular artist. You know, come with info about your favorite artist. Think about these as a way to creatively kind of boost our auction. And also, at the day of the event, you can wear a t-shirt, like with Starry Night on it, or a t-shirt from your favorite social justice project, anything like that. Is that it? Do we get all that?
I think so.
All right.
It's going to be 2 to 5 again.
2 to 5 outside.
It's
Outside.
2 tents.
2 tents, wonderful stuff like last year. Before that even happens, though, that's happening on the Saturday the 15th, the Sunday before that, I want to invite anyone who is relatively new to Westside. Now, you might have been here a couple years, but you haven't actually joined yet. Or you might be visiting and curious. On Sunday, October 9th, after the service, we're going to have sort of a welcome to Westside orientation to Westside conversation. And Elizabeth Corbett, who's our membership coordinator, and I will be hosting that. We'll have some food. It's a chance to learn about how Westside functions behind the scenes, what it means to become a member, how membership works, all those sorts of things. Anyone is invited to that. It's going to be, again, Sunday, October 9th after the service. And one more public service announcement about an event that you can join in on. One of the auction events last year was a drumming circle that I and the worship team offered, and some people signed up for it, but pretty much anybody's welcome. We're going to hold it on December 4th. So on the afternoon of December 4th, we'll be drumming up some holiday cheer. Okay? We're going to be doing some drumming, and you don't have to know how to drum. You don't have to have a drum. It's just a chance to come and sit and make some percussion music all together. So everyone is invited for that, December 4th in the afternoon. All right. Are there any other big urgent announcements that we need to cover so that we can enter into the real contemplative, reflective, restorative, nourishing time that we have together? We're going to begin this morning with some opening music by Sandra. So I invite you to take a deep breath. Today we're going to be talking about forgiveness of ourselves and of others. So I invite you to just take a deep breath and call to mind whatever it is that is heavy in your heart today. Allow yourself to become present with whatever it is that you are carrying that may be too much to carry alone, that might be a struggle, that might be difficult for you. We bring these things into the container of community so that we can have support and wisdom and guidance and inspiration and encouragement in carrying them. So as I invite the bowl to sound, I simply invite you to settle into your seat, settle into your body, settle into an awareness that you are carrying things and that we are all here together to share the journey.
As Unitarian Universalists, we're known to gather inspiration and wisdom from all sources. It's quite fitting, then, that I've got this book of so-called daily blessings for the evening meal. Our chalice lighting today was included in that book and is from the Rosh Hashanah liturgy. Today, Bless us and help us grow.
Rosh Hashanah, which happens this year today, it begins today. It'll begin this evening and go until Tuesday evening, is the Jewish New Year. It remembers the creation of the world and marks the beginning of the Jewish High Holy Days, which include what are called 10 days of awe, a time of reflection and repentance, which end on the holiday of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This is a time to reflect on the past year, the one that is now ending, in order to gain perspective and make amends for any errors in our past. In Jewish theology, this is a time to practice teshuvah, or repentance, so that life can be affirmed moving forward. These words, our opening words this morning, are from poet and rabbi Diane Elliott, speaking about becoming aware of this time, which she describes as a time of turning, the turning of the seasons of our lives, wrong turns we or others may have made, turning to look behind us or before us for perspective, and turning inward to the source of stillness in all motion, the source of peace and quiet and chaos. So this is her poem, These Are the Days of Turning. These are the days of turning. Nights turn cold. Leaves turn to yellow parchment. Children turn to yell in the street. Trucks turn left from the wrong lane. Have you ever turned so fast, so long, that you felt still? Start slowly. Turn carefully, foot over foot. At this speed, you see everything, 360 degrees, the whole sphere. You see the direction you came from and where you're going and the infinity of points between, all the possibles. Now turn faster, pedaling the feet, never stopping, speeding till all becomes a blur, moving color, formless form. Till what you see is not outside, but within, the core around which you turn, that inside place of constant motion, which is also still, a deep place from which you move out to embrace and in to rest. Let us turn and turn until we feel that place, simple, sentient soul, steeped in grace, not afraid, but wordless, awe-filled, whole. Let us find that moving, steady space from which we can spin out and grow. Each week, one of the things we do is we gather here to turn inward, to be inward, to reflect, and then move outward. The idea is that when we are here, we are inward, we are together, and then we go outward when we leave this place different, to change ourselves, to change the world. Each week we take an offering to support that work as we go out in the world, to support us being able to have this space here and also the capacity to function in the world. As Sandra plays some more beautiful music for us, we're going to be accepting an offering for the support of both our inward and our outward moving service. Part of our offering each week is specifically dedicated to going outward in the world. And at this quarter, we're sharing with Knox Pride. Some of you may know that Pride Fest is happening soon. Does anybody know the exact date? I think it's maybe next week.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Of this coming week, right, Judy? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? Yeah. So Pride Fest usually happens in the spring, but this year they've moved it to the fall. So just a public service announcement. That's happening now. You can check it out online. So I really like the season of autumn, this season of turning. And some of you know, autumn just arrived. Mabon is here. The fall equinox, fall's here. I personally love the turning of leaves, the deepening colors as the trees go from gold into gold and red and orange and all those beautiful things. I personally love the turning down of summer heat and humidity and the turning on of heaters. And one of my favorite turnings is turning on the oven to bake bread and apple crisp, right? I love turning off the busy, busy, busy energy of the summer season and settling into the more restful time that comes in autumn to a farm. And I actually really love the feeling of turning inward that comes with staying indoors more, sitting by the wood stove, and those longer nights and shorter days. I personally don't often think of this time of turning as a time for atonement and forgiveness. Our dominant culture and the family culture that I personally grew up in, these cultures are actually very strongly rooted in Christianity. And in that model, the seasonal turning has a little bit of a different focus. In that model, the new year is marked with very forward-looking intentions. And our dominant cultural holidays in December and January encourage us to be jubilant and celebratory, cheering the birth of the new year, and in more theological terms, perhaps cheering the birth of a Savior. They paint the new year as a time of new commitments, fresh starts, fresh beginnings. And those are wonderful. Both the sacred and the secular versions are wonderful, but they don't include a lot of looking back at past errors. And yet, the season of autumn does really bring with it a kind of solemnity and even sadness, a melancholy. It does invite us to look back at what has passed in a more serious kind of a way. It's got that feeling of just quiet melancholy about it. Social researcher and teacher Brene Brown speaks often about the kind of attention to past errors that the Jewish high holy days invite us to focus on. She talks about the importance of looking at our mistakes and naming them. And she distinguishes atonement from the sort of toxic shaming that often takes its place in our culture. Often, instead of looking back with reflection and compassion, we look at errors and mistakes with judgment, shame, penalties, punishment. And those ways of looking at mistakes can either make us be defensive or avoidant, frozen into non-action. In a public social media exchange on this topic a few years ago, Brene Brown said this: I found regret to be one of the most powerful emotional reminders that change and growth are necessary. It's a function of empathy. It's a call to courage and a path towards wisdom. Like all emotions, regret can be used constructively or destructively, but the wholesale dismissal of regret is wrong-headed and dangerous. No regrets. It doesn't mean living with courage. It means living without reflection. To live without regret is to believe you have nothing to learn, no amends to make, and no opportunity to be braver with your life. Rather than seeing regret as something to be avoided, she considers it something to be embraced. It's a function of empathy. So can we have the courage and conviction of our values to look honestly at where we've fallen short? Can we bring enough empathy to others in our sphere that we're willing to see how we are the cause of harm? That's going to be difficult. Why is it so hard so often for us to just openly admit our errors? Why does seeing our mistakes, being honest about them with ourselves and others, finding paths to healing those mistakes seem so difficult? For me, when I think about this, what I notice is that at the core of the problem seems to lie a serious lack of compassion, not with others, but with ourselves. How many of us, you do not need to raise your hands, but in your heart, raise your little hand. How many of us have been shamed or punished for mistakes? How many of us dread being called out for mistakes, or even whether those are intentional defensive behavior or actual just plain out simple mistakes? How many of us dread that because we've experienced having our imperfections seen as being told we are bad or failures? We are human. This means that we are going to do a few things for sure. We will fall short of living our values, probably a fair amount of the time. We will become defensive when we feel threatened, whether by others' defensiveness towards us or simply by their differences from us. Many things can cause defensiveness, but we will become defensive sometimes when we feel threatened. If we're honest with ourselves, we will see that we feel confused, uncertain, and out of our own depth a lot of the time. We will feel out of our depth. And we will, nevertheless, act with a level of certainty and bravado that is not merited a fair amount of the time. All of these are very human behaviors, and they will, without a doubt, cause harm to us and to others. We cannot avoid this. Perhaps the problem isn't that we're human, but that we're trying so darn hard not to be and expecting other people not to be. We set for ourselves and for one another the unrealistic expectation that we should know how to get it right, figure it out, and always do better, when in fact our very humanness means that we are perfectly imperfect. That's Brené Brown's language. Okay, the gifts of imperfection. We cannot possibly always get it right or figure it out or always do better right away. And I am going to add that as Unitarian Universalists, we are particularly troubled by the mistaken assumption in our cultural norms of human perfectibility. Without the buffer of divine intervention or the container of a divine plan that is the foundation of other traditions, many UUs lean too heavily on us humans, in our humanness, getting everything figured out and done. Now I want you to pause for a minute and ask yourselves, how many times have you beaten yourself up because you should have done that better? You should have, I should have known that. I should have gotten that thing right. I should have. We're super good at shoulding on ourselves and on each other. So when we find ourselves in our very human errors, the lack of perspective, not acknowledging that we're not always going to get it right and that we're going to hurt each other in ways we don't intend. When we find ourselves making mistakes, we often see ourselves as failures, as bad, or as a problem. And in fact, because we do that to ourselves, we constantly do it to each other as well. In other words, we have a tendency to deny ourselves and others a certain level of compassion. Now, as UUs, we say that we really want to promote compassion, equity, and justice in the world. The 7 principles start at home. The 7 principles start at home. Here's what happens too often. Instead of being able to look at mistakes we make, acknowledge them, have compassion for ourselves, and make amends, make necessary changes in our behaviors, we are so afraid of self-condemnation or social condemnation that we avoid and or defend. We deny and we judge others to avoid being judged ourselves. And this happens at the micro and macro levels. So this happens in small battles over housework. It happens in big discussions about racial equity. It happens in tugs of war over church policies and in public debates about our government and our laws. It happens in our homes. It happens in our houses of worship, in our places of business, and in our seats of government. We are a society saturated with the kind of toxic shaming that Brené Brown bravely tries to avert. One of my favorite Brené Brown stories is this story she tells about elementary school open house night. She tells this wonderful story about how, if you've ever had kids in an elementary school, this will sound familiar to you. It's open house, and you're supposed to bring cookies. You're supposed to bring cookies to the open house. And you get to the open house, and you realize you have forgotten the cookies. And Brené Brown tells a story on herself about flat out lying to the teacher that, yeah, those cookies right there, those are the ones I brought. We've all done something like that in one way or another. And why would we do that? Because we're so saturated with being shamed for our humanness that we want to avoid and avert experiencing that shame again. And unfortunately, one of the ways we try to avert it is by shaming others. We implicate others in our self-protective strategies. Whoever brought those cookies now looks like they didn't bring cookies. Right? So she tells these stories on herself and says we have to accept our imperfections. We have to own this so that we can actually work as a team to make the world a better place. So I love this idea of fruitful regret. The kind of turning and atonement that the Jewish High Holy Days offer us is really an opportunity to collectively acknowledge, like the whole culture of the High Holy Days says, we all screwed up this year. Let's just take a minute and honor that. We have all done some things we're not proud of. And the other thing that's beautiful about it is that because everybody's doing it and everybody's openly walking up to their friends and their neighbors and their family members and saying, I'm really sorry. I did that thing back in August, or I did that thing back in May, or I did that thing back in January, and I never apologized. But now I'm going to apologize because I'm really sorry I did that. That was out of line. There is a collective permission to apologize without being shamed. Isn't that beautiful? And I want to be clear about something. This sort of reflection is not just personal relationship work, it's social justice work. The ability to turn towards ourselves, admit that we have limitations and patterns or behaviors that are harmful, this is essential if we are going to be able to live our values in our homes and our world, because we will not always live up to our values. But if we want to improve on that, we have to be willing to admit where we're not doing it. And we need grace for ourselves and others if we're going to do it well. We need to be gracious with our forgiveness, both for ourselves and others. We need to be gentle with remembering and reflecting. We need to hold ourselves sacred and valuable while we openly admit that we are flawed. Now, one of the biggest arguments against this kind of approach is, yeah, but then you're just letting people get away with stuff. We need to be held accountable. There is a difference between compassion and poor boundaries. And unfortunately, this is another thing that we often make a mistake about. We think that being kind means having terrible boundaries. We think that being compassionate means saying, I understand why you're doing that, okay. It doesn't mean that. If we are actually able to honestly and with compassion look at errors, we're able to say, you know what, I love you, and that is really hurtful. How can we work together to repair that? What if we could meet our failings and the failings of others with tenderness and kindness? What if we called each other in rather than out on mistakes or harm? What if we assumed best intentions first and yet spoke honestly about things that were happening that were not okay with us? What if we acknowledged patterns that need changing in ourselves and others, but did so with the assumption that the other person really wanted to be in relationship with us and with kindness and compassion might be willing to explore change? What if we felt so secure in a shared collective recognition of our humanness that when someone came to us with those messages, someone came and said, hey, listen, you said this thing, or you did this thing, and I was really upset by that. I want you to sit with that for a minute. Pretend that we'll just use me as an example. Pretend that I come to you and say, hey, you know what? I really want to talk about this. You said or did this thing, and I was really upset about it. What's your gut reaction to that? For many of us, it's panic. And then defensiveness, immediate defensiveness, or running away, or I'm going to quit this church, or I'm going to leave, or I'm going to whatever, I'm going to break up with you, right? What if we change the paradigm? And we could here, folks, we could do that here. We could change the paradigm that says, you can come to me and say that. You can come to me and say, hey, I'm not very happy about this. I'm feeling really upset. And I can answer by saying, wow, I'm really curious about that. What does that mean for you? I'm so sorry, that was not my intention. Let's talk about that, right? And we trusted each other enough to have those kinds of conversations. The Jewish High Holy Days are actually a collective exercise in that kind of relating. As you use, we have a very, 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 very long list of things we want to fix in our world, things that we think are going wrong. And we have a very, 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 very long list of expectations for ourselves to fix those things. And that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing that we're looking out at the world and saying, wow, wow. Often, when we look at that long list of things, we turn to ourselves and say, oh my gosh, you should be doing better. Oh my gosh, I should have known that already. I should have already figured that out. Or, not my problem. We deny or defend or beat up on ourselves or judge. We have this list of options. What if we were to change up that paradigm and say to ourselves, you know what, I'm human. I'm glad I learned that new thing. I didn't realize that. That's something I think I might want to work on. I might need some help. I might need some help working on that one because I'm not really sure how to do it myself. I might need a little support for that. This is about being vulnerable and exposing ourselves emotionally, spiritually, relationally. What if we began by treating ourselves more kindly first, practicing compassion towards ourselves? That's the nice, easy beginning version. That's sort of like the training wheels of this practice. What if today, the first time you catch yourself saying, oh, I shoulda. What if the first time you catch yourself saying it, you say to yourself, you know what? It's okay. Not, I had a good reason for that. Not the defensive, it's okay, but the, wow, yeah, that's something I want to work on, and I have compassion for myself. That's something that's hard for me. We begin with compassion towards ourselves, and that helps us have compassion towards others. We need these if we're going to accomplish anything at all. There's no way to improve behaviors we're unconscious about, and there's no way to ask others to improve their behaviors without loving kindness. If someone comes to you and says, you got to change that, you're bad, we might change it out of fear, but it doesn't really help us grow in closeness or in depth. But if someone comes to us and says, you know, I really care about you, this is really hard for me, we might have the courage to change. There is no fuel for change and transformation in the midst of shame, self-loathing, unrealistic expectations, and judgment of ourselves or others. There is no, I'm going to repeat that, there is no real fuel for true change and transformation in an individual, in a community, or in a society in the midst of shame, self-loathing, unrealistic expectations of perfection, and judgment of self or others. We must go around these. And so, this time when we recognize the Jewish High Holy Days, this time of reflection, let us be both kind to ourselves and honest with ourselves. Let us greet our mistakes and the mistakes of others with clarity and openness and with compassion. This is us living these values. We say that we are the church of the open mind, right? The loving hearts and the helping hands. Open our minds and also open our hearts to ourselves and to others. May it be so. So one of the ways we do this here, it's not in your order of service, but today you will see the candles are out. Once in a while, every few weeks, we take time to share our joys and concerns, to be vulnerable with one another, to speak about what is happening for us in our lives and our concerns. So at this time, we will be ending our live stream for the confidentiality and the privacy of those who will be speaking. So with great thanks to those of you who have attended virtually, we wish you in the coming week self-compassion, self-forgiveness, and also the courage and clarity to be truthful about what is in your world. And as we enter into this time together of sharing as a community, I